Welcome back. I'm Christopher Valentine with our special guest, Dr. Christian von Lahr, star of Messenger, and his website is messengerontv.com. Welcome back, Christian. And
hi, Christopher.
We were talking about mystical beings, and I want to touch on another type of nature spirit, pixies, and then go into fairy godmothers, because a lot of people know about pixies. They've been asking us about them, and of course fairy godmothers we've heard in our fairy tales, and we want to find out if they're real.
Well, you know, Christopher, you're actually the one that's sort of the expert on pixies. You've been exploring them for some time, and I know they have so many wonderful stories in the book about the things that they do, like learning to fly. I remember that one story where they're on the top of the birdhouses, running from one end to the other, trying to learn how to fly, because when pixies actually sort of grant wishes or do good things, they can actually use up the energy that's collected around what we call wings, okay? And so they're always having to earn their wings. I think when they start out, they have to do things to start building up the energy, so that's earning their wings. And as I recall, the wings can change colors and shapes.
Yeah, they're green when they start out, and it means that they don't have their wings yet, and so they're running across like an airline strip and trying to take off, and they kind of go pop to the ground.
I remember
they're okay.
Remember the story we did, and they were actually strapping on like popsicle sticks for wings, trying to fly to give them a little edge. You know, it's just like our life. You can't take any shortcuts. You got to
That's
earn.
when they're first starting out, and even when they get older, they can return to that green stage, so to speak, which is a color where they've given up a lot of their energy to help make pixie dust, which is real. It is real, and it's what leprechauns activate to make.
So they work with the leprechauns to make what we call a pixie dust or leprechaun dust, which is sort of some natural occurring blends of beryl and other gem essences, so to speak, that gets trapped in the strata of the earth, and usually at the tops of mountains, where the weight of the mountain's been crushing down, and these liquid forms of these bases for gems is trickling through them over many, many ages. And so it sort of streaks on them like a mica, and it's sort of flaky. And so when these mountains start breaking, earthquakes and things, it sort of comes to the surface. So if we want to get this dust, we have to actually go out and find it, and it's very hard to get and cultivate this leprechaun dust. But the pixies help the leprechauns get it, and the leprechauns actually do another process to actually activate it. But what's interesting is it's sort of made out of the things, the essences we find in nature, and then the leprechauns imbue it with other special properties.
And then they sprinkle it over humans, like their aura, which is already activated, and our dreams and wishes that we were talking about earlier can be seen in our aura. Is that how it manifests into form when they?
Well, that's true, because what the pixie dust is trying to do is there's components in there, atoms, so to speak, of different things. Remember the story we mentioned where certain notes on a piano put together is actually genius. It makes chords, okay? So there has to be special combinations in nature that brings out the best in us and our best properties, that makes us more well. Remember, eons ago, we used to live over 1,000 years. We've made ourselves unwell. And so they're helping us go back to that state.
The reason, though, I wanted to talk about this earlier, because we mentioned earlier on the show today, the reason that we lived 1,000 years is because we weren't as dense now. Is that why?
Oh, it isn't just that we weren't as dense. There's things like karma, you know, we sort of pay the price of our existence, okay? And that sort of weighs us down more, which makes us become more dense, by the way. So there's sort of part and parcel.
I didn't know that.
So our attitudes and our focuses in life, and if it's too self-oriented, and it's that self-orientation that makes us really fall into density. And that's why we're talking about midpoints in new ages like 2012 as an example, okay? Where we suddenly realize, our ego says, great, I've been using my ego to find a focus in life. I know exactly what to do. I'm the one that's right, everyone else is wrong. The only fallacy there is that you have 3 trillion people in the world, or maybe 8 trillion people, all with the same kind of thinking process, okay? So we eventually realize, well, wait a minute. I need great things to happen in this lifetime, and all of my logic, all my science isn't bringing me those things. I'm really ill, I'm worried about my mother, or I can't find a relationship, or the world's just falling apart. There's got to be something greater up there to help us, and there is, and the nature people knew this, okay? The ancients knew this. So we're trying to open ourselves up to that. So we will start realizing with our own reasoning, logic, our own egos, that we will talk ourselves out of our ego, basically. It's like, wait a minute, there has to be something more. This is making no sense anymore. And so we're going to start taking the shields that we put up. It's like layers of an onion. We're going to start unpeeling these, and we technically will become naturally lighter again because we've added all this density with our views. But in the process of opening up or unfolding, so to speak, we're acknowledging that instead of the world and universe being about us and man, which is simply a current state of consciousness, we're actually connected to the same thing as nature spirits, the same thing as birds and angels and other kinds of life. We're just expressed a different way. So we're going to start seeing that, wait a minute, I'm just a grain of sand in all the beaches, in all the worlds, in the whole universe. And it's okay. It's great because I'm an essential grain of sand. Because remember, nature is the sum total of things in the universe. So it's quintessential that I exist, and there's something unique about me, even though I'm a grain of sand, because we're playing in a much bigger universe, and we're still important. It's not just about us, though. We actually enjoy the fact that we're in here with quadrillions of other expressions of life, trying to accomplish something even greater, something bigger, and that's not easy to do, but we're reaching that stage where we're looking for, we may call it oneness, but we always were one. We're just shrouded, right? So we're unveiling this, and we're seeing that we're part of something naturally that's consistent throughout the universe.
Fantastic. I mean, how can you beat beautiful, big, metaphysical answers like that? Christian is the very best at that. And getting back to Pixies and some of the very simple
Oh, that's
things.
right. We were talking about Pixies.
Some of the very simple things. Well, this is the first interview ever that I know of Pixies, and Christian was actually driving, and I'm interviewing Pixies while he's channeling the answers at the same time that he's driving, and we got very simple answers from them, like what kind of foods do they like to eat, or what I'd say it in first directly to them, what kind of foods do you like to eat? And they said, well, they're fruitarians, and they like to take the etheric part of right where the berry meets the stem, or the end of the berry, or right where the sap's coming down from the end, and they said that's their crunchy, sappy food. We also talked about what they're connected to, what kind of higher being, and they said Venus, the planet of beauty.
Which also has enormous cosmic influences, and some ancients would even say that we existed on Venus at one time. Others would say that there's a time coming where we may actually do something with Venus, so it may have importance in our life still.
Well, they kind of touch on something that in the book, and I remember them saying that Venus comes to the Earth over great spanses of time, very, very long time, where she makes herself known to the Pixies, and she says what she wants to have changed in the world, maybe a different type of beauty. It almost makes me kind of think of the Earth changes that surround 2012 and all that.
Exactly.
And so maybe Venus is making her presence known again.
This is part of the whole Mayan culture. If we talk about 2012, they kept tracking Venus because when that midpoint in time, and I know other authors will call it an end time, but there was never an end point to the Mayan calendar. It's a spiral, like climbing a spring, and they're watching the center of the galaxy, and the galaxy spirals. And they're just saying every 26,000 years something happens. And why would they track the center of the galaxy? It's the only timepiece that was reliable. The planets themselves come into existence and out. They can disappear. But also they move around, there's collisions. The only thing you can trust is the center of the galaxy. But what's interesting is they notice that when this occurs, this midpoint cycle, as I call it, Venus always shows up, and that's the morning star and the evening star. So that's Venus is instrumental to that happening, and actually we call it an Ouroboros when we see the center of the galaxy circling like that, because the ancients called it like the snake eating its tail, which is why some philosophies use that symbol, Ouroboros. But when that happens, we see Venus. We also see another bright star, or something like a star, which the ancients would call like a Metatron. You see that in ancient philosophy, signifying like a Messiah and some change. And so, of course, the nature spirits know that the universe, as far as we're concerned, is changing. and all the Pleiades are going off, and all the alignments are going, crossing the center of the galaxy, which is changing the other influences that affect us. But the thing is, the Pixies and the nature spirits know this. And so, just like the Mayans and other cultures, they have to watch Venus and other planets too. Because, you know, Venus is also, speaking of heaven and hell, in the story of Persephone. And, you know, when we cross that center of the galaxy at December 21st, 2012, the alignment of our planets is like a string. It crosses the galaxy on an elliptic that actually forms a cross, which is why the ancients were always drawn to crosses, as are nature spirits. So these symbolism are actually picked up by nature spirits too.
Well, that was Anastasia who was channeled in the book, as well as Pen-a-quill. Those are our first two pixies that we got so much information from in the book, Magical Powers and Mystical Beings. And you know, we were talking about planets and it just popped into my head. The leprechauns, one of our leprechauns, O'Reilly, makes a prediction that we will find life on Saturn. And that is very exciting because right now at this time, nobody knows of any life on Saturn. And maybe...
I'm sure they're right.
I'm sure they're right. I can't wait
Now,
because...
what do pixies look like?
Well, pixies are very, very small, tiny. They don't really go very high when they're flying. They stay close to the forest floor.
Okay, and I would say that pixies also come in great numbers too. It's really interesting when we observe the nature spirits because it's a pattern. With gnomes, they have a kind of a duality. They don't have complete individualization as we do because they haven't evolved that far yet. So they come in groups of two, which we call running mates. So where there's one, there's two, and it's like a split personality. Just consider like humans at one point. We're one, androgynous, and then we split off with duality into the male and feminine side of us, which used to be unclosed. So they're still reaching that stage, and
I know
the elves come in groups of 6, and leprechauns in large groups, fairies.
They
in
talk
groups of
about
10.
all the different groups they come in. They talk about how to build a gnome clock in this book. They talk about the special times to light those candles.
Gnome clock.
A gnome clock.
That's interesting.
When to tell time. They also say the best times to see nature spirits. Very specific times on when the best time is to see fairies twice a day. Best time to see gnomes. And I know we only have about 20 seconds left, and I know we're going to talk about fairy godmothers. So a quick background or overview, and what we found out is that fairy godmothers are really leprechaun ladies who are hearing the wishes of not only the gnome children but human children at night.
And they are connected with grandparents who are up on that heavenly mental plane because the nature spirits are closer to the earth. They can physically affect the earth better. So when we're making those wishes, they eventually travel up to the grandparents who are virtually on the verge of heaven, and all they can do is manifest. So they want to help you bring those dreams come true. But they have to work through the intermediaries, the angels and nature spirits, to do some of the harder work. So there's the connection. So your wishes and miracles are coming from the grandparents or great-grandparents, and those fairy godmothers, leprechauns, are picking up the influence because they're a little higher than we are, and close to us too. And so they make them come true.
That is fantastic. This has been such an amazing show with Dr. Christian von Lahr, Star of Messenger. Check him out on messengerontv.com. The book is Magical Powers and Mystical Beings, Any One for Jinn, available on our website, mistoftheoracle.com and ChristopherValentineShow.com. Thank you so much for joining us today.